If America doesn't get involved in this conflict, it will be a message that the United States is a useless ally.
How should Israel respond to Iran?
I believe that they need to attack facilities in Iran, attack army bases. I don't want them to attack civilians like Iran does. But I would like Iranians to know that their country has led them into a war that they cannot win. Most Iranians hate the scum who run that country. And it's a term I rarely use in public, but if they're not scum, then the term is not useful for anybody. These are vile people. They kill women who show hair. I mean, the anti-Israel crowd support the worst human beings in the world that govern countries. So yes, of course Israel will respond. I think that's a given. What Israel has done, though, in the last 2 weeks is very interesting. They lost something they have had essentially since 1948, an intimidation factor vis-a-vis those who wish to destroy Israel. And remember, the raison d'etre, the reason for being of Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Iranian regime is to destroy Israel. There is nothing, for Hezbollah and Hamas, there are no other values. For the Iranian regime, there's also the value of ruling Iran. But their greatest aim is to destroy Israel. The West, or let's put it this way, graduates of elite universities, who tend to be the biggest fools in the Western world, they do not recognize that there is a unique evil on earth. There is no desire to annihilate any country except Israel. There are 200-something countries. Only one is targeted for annihilation. Publicly, it is stated. It is the boast. It is, as I said, the raison d'etre, the reason for being of these regimes. Israel is fighting for its life. Israel has fought for its life in every one of its wars. If Israel loses a war, Israel is no longer. If Hamas loses a war or Iran loses a war, they're still there. But if Israel loses a war, there is no Israel. And that there are any number of people who loathe Israel, it gives you an idea of the low moral state of the universe.
Do you think this is America's war? Should America get involved in Israel's response to Iran? Should America essentially get involved in this conflict?
If America doesn't get involved in this conflict, it will be a message that the United States is a useless ally. If that is the message that Americans wish to convey at this time, it is not the America that I grew up with. It is as radical a change as men give birth.
In what way should they get involved? Does that mean boots on the ground? Does that mean military support?
No. Israel has always made it clear they don't want a single American soldier fighting on their behalf. And by the way, the interesting thing is the whole Iron Dome was created by Israel. The U.S. may manufacture it, but it's Israel that invented it. It has been an enormous boost to the United States. The people who ask, gee, what has Israel done for the United States? There are generals who have said, and there is one general that the Wall Street Journal recently quoted, who said Israel is worth 5 CIAs.
And what do you say to the Americans who think that domestic priorities are more important than supplying military aid to Israel? For example, we've recently seen, this terrible hurricane that swept much of the nation. The border, requires a lot more funding and so on. And there are many people who are saying, why are we spending this money on Israel or Ukraine and we're not spending it on America?
Well, first of all, I don't think Ukraine and Israel is completely analogous. The question, I supported America defending Ukraine in the beginning. I am now a rare thing in my own life. I'm a peacenik. We're watching a generation of Ukrainians slaughtered, and it is in no one's interest that the war continue. If something can be worked out, it should be. Joe Biden sent Boris Johnson to your former prime minister to Ukraine 2 years ago to stop peace negotiations. There is nothing Joe Biden did, literally nothing that has been good for the world. But to answer directly, this notion that we have domestic problems and therefore we shouldn't aid anyone, is that true for Taiwan? If China wishes to take over Taiwan, would the same people say, well, sorry, we got hurricanes. We had hurricanes when Britain was being bombed by the Nazis. And there were Americans, indeed, who did say that. We have hurricanes. There will never be a time when there are no problems domestically. So what people are saying who say that is, we should aid no one on earth. I'm a religious person. I believe in a biblical law. You cannot stand by the bloodshed of your neighbor. It is a biblical law. And while obviously we can't defend everyone, we're certainly not defending the only real well, there were two genocides taking place now in Ethiopia and in Sudan. And the world is doing nothing because Israel is not involved. And so who cares if a million blacks die? That's the world's view, by the way. That's the African view. That's the South African government's view. They couldn't care less how many blacks die. The world doesn't care how many Christians are killed by Islamic terrorists in Nigeria. 70,000 since the year 2000. It doesn't mean a thing to the world. Only Israel troubles the world. And there's a reason for that, because only Israel is Jewish. I mean, that's the unspoken truth. Nikki Haley wrote a brilliant piece about that in the Wall Street Journal a few months ago. What she saw at the UN was pure anti-Semitism. And, as the old saying goes, and I've written a book on anti-Semitism called Why the Jews, in the warmest of hearts, there's a cold spot for the Jews. But even putting all of that aside, this notion we have domestic problems, in other words, so if we help no other country, we won't have domestic problems? We are in debt because of foreign aid? I mean, that we give too much, that's fine. I couldn't agree more. And by the way, there's no doubt Israel has learned from this. They cannot depend on the United States, and they will make their own defense industry strong enough to weather the storms that will inevitably attack them. But it is a terrible lesson. It is painful. The citizens of no country on earth love America like Israelis.
Where has Joe Biden been during this crisis, and what about Kamala Harris?
I know you, and I know you're a serious man, but the question sort of is a joke question, I have to say. Where is Joe Biden? Where was Joe Biden during the campaign in 2020? In a basement. Joe Biden is president of the United States is actually a pitiful statement about the state of the United States. Kamala Harris, her ability to govern the United States is so minuscule that I wrote a book on happiness, and I am a really happy guy. But if she becomes president, it will test my happiness. I can only foresee a destructive nature. And the first thing to be destroyed in America, if she wins, will be free speech. Tim Walz already announced it, and she has announced it, that they will censor misinformation. Misinformation, since Vladimir Lenin and the Russian Revolution, is the term the left uses for all information, for all ideas that counter their power. It has nothing to do with misinformation. The misinformation that we got during COVID all came from the U.S. government. And as Jacinda Ardern, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, announced, and I played this on my radio show about a dozen times since then, if you do not hear it from the government, it is not true. That is the quintessential left-wing view. We possess truth. That is why the Soviet communist newspaper was Pravda. Pravda, which I know Russian, Pravda means truth. Truth on the left is what the left says it is, not what it is.
But just coming back to the Democrats' policies towards Israel, it seems like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have been more critical of Israel in recent months. Perhaps they're pandering to Muslim voters in Michigan and other places. But also on the right, you've seen the rise of anti-Israel America First movement. And I know that you've talked about this recently, and we might get into that a little bit, but what do you make of this sort of dual attack on Israel from both the left and the right in America?
It's actually quite sad, having been on the right for my adult life. I wrote a column about a year or two ago saying, I am America first, but I am not America only. America only is not a moral idea, and if America doesn't stand for moral ideas, what the hell is America? America is an idea. It is not an ethnicity.
Do you make a distinction between those on the right who, for example, make the criticisms that I made earlier, we need to focus on domestic priorities, Israel and other foreign wars are not in America's interest to be involved with, and this sort of obsession with Israel that American politicians, particularly conservative, maybe neocon politicians, have had for the last 20, 30 years, needs to be ended. And those who are perhaps going a bit more extreme and more along the anti-Semitic line of thinking. Do you make that nuance there? Do you see that nuance?
What you're asking is a question I never ask. What are people's motives? I have written all of my life and lectured on moral issues. So here's one of my basic rules of life. Intentions don't mean a damn thing. Most of the people who supported Stalin had good intentions. Equality, lifting the poor, getting rid of the Tsar. And they supported the greatest genocidal movement in the history of the world, communism. The people who gave Stalin nuclear secrets were motivated by lovely ideas of equality and a paradise on earth. So I don't give a damn what people's motives are. I only care what they do. So if, as I give the example in the other direction. If somebody builds a cancer clinic, a world-class cancer clinic, and they put their name on the building, on the clinic's name, and they only did it because they want to be known as the benefactor of a clinic, it is irrelevant to me whether they did it out of pure altruism or a desire to have their name known. They have saved people who have cancer. All that matters in life is what you do. And therefore, I don't care what their intentions are. If your intentions are just because you love America, you will let Israel get destroyed, or you hate Israel and you let Israel get destroyed, what the hell is the difference?
Why is Israel America's fight?
Well, just to make it clear, Israel is not the only place that is America's fight. I think Taiwan is as well. But Israel has had a particular place in the American psyche, in the American heart, in the American conscience, and in Israel has voted with the United States more than any other country in the world at the United Nations. That's just a statistic. If I'm wrong, I lied to your audience. So that's as clear as you can get. Israel has been a tremendous help to the United States, especially in the Cold War. And now, America, see, if you believe America stands for something other than taking care of Americans, then it is clear why Israel is in America's interest. If the only concern of America is Americans, then it is not the America that has existed since 1776. This is the idea of the moral has played a profound role in American life. Plus the Judeo-Christian bases of the country. That has also played a role, and that's fine, as it should. That's the greatest friends of Israel tend to be Christians. Not all Christians by any means. Left-wing Christians are no friend of Israel any more than left-wing secularists. But you certainly have a greater proportion of evangelical Christians who are pro-Israel than Harvard graduates. But if anyone who thinks that Harvard produces morally aware people as a general rule is mistaken.